Hi everybody, Steve Griffiths here, developer of the MTPredictor software program. In today's video I'd like to show you how why we teach users to use the more advanced techniques in the MTPredictor software program, and as such can capture some absolutely brilliant trades. A great example is on the 3-minute YM or the YM yesterday. Initially it may seem that the trade setups weren't that good, but I want to go through how we teach our more experienced users and how you can see we actually can capture some fantastic trades. So first and foremost we go to the higher time frame chart. So for this I'll go to the 15-minute chart. Now I want to stress this, so I'll just put a bit of white space on the right hand side. I want to stress that these levels that I'm placing on are on the chart in advance. So if I scroll the day back before yesterday, yesterday was Wednesday the 4th of June, so even before yesterday unfolded, what we would have done, and this is what we teach in our training webinars, is we use our connected pivots, which you can see on our chart here. We go back to the last swing pivot, which you could see here, which actually was the low of the day before. Right mouse click, place our decision point on. Now I want to stress that this is actually on the chart in advance. This is a leading indicator. This is why it's so powerful, is it's there ready before the market even gets there, in this case before the market even opened. If I then scroll forward, you can see how on this 15-minute chart this actually caught the very low of the day. Now why is this so important? Well, first of all, it's great to have levels on your chart in advance, but let's go back to the 3-minute chart. Now on the 3-minute chart you can see this is what happened. There's your level on the chart in advance, ready for you. As the market comes down, you can see that it comes down and finds support at this level. Now what we teach is that when you have larger degree support or support on a higher time frame, the best trade setup, or one of the best trade setups we do in MTPredictor, is what we call our Holy Grail trade setup, and this is what is off a wave 2 correction. So what we're looking for is support on a higher time frame. This defines what we call an important low. We then look for an initial rally off that low. We then look for an initial correction. And as you see, as I'm going forward, that's exactly what the market did. It made an initial rally. It then made an initial correction. This initial correction is then into, if I put the Elliott waves on, into what we call a wave 2. It's labeled wave 2 or B here, but because we know this is coming off an important low initially, we know this is a 1, this is a 2. Why is this so important? Well, it's important because we know that after that we tend to get a wave 3 kind of rally, and that's exactly what we got there. Really strong rally. So what we teach is that as the market, just clear this off, as the market's making the first correction down here, we're looking for this correction to subdivide into a minor ABC. This is the typical pattern found in a wave 2 type of correction. Now normally this would come up as an automatic setup on our 3-minute chart. It didn't do that here, but because you have your scanner running, which is your market analyzer and NinjaTrader, you can then be actively looking for setups, buy setups on this first correction down. And if I go to the 2-minute chart, this is exactly what unfolded. So it unfolded as a buy setup there with our TS1 buy setup. There was actually another setup a little bit earlier here as well that I'll look on in a second. But I just want to stress how you would actually see this as the day goes on. In other words, you'd have known that this was a higher time frame support. In other words, on the 15-minute DP, because that would be on your chart already. After the market started to rally, which it did here, you'll then be actively looking for an ABC correction in this first correction after the initial rally. It came down to an initial setup here. Let's place the analysis on. That would have given a potential TS1 buy setup. You'd have liked the look of that, and actually that would have just stopped you out for a -1 hour loss. That's quite frustrating, but it doesn't matter because the position sizing we use here, which varies the number of lots, contracts or shares, keeps your initial risk small. In other words, this would have been a -1 hour loss or 1 risk unit. So I'll just note that down. So that would be a -1 hour loss. You then get a second setup here, which you now place the analysis on, and as you can see that would have actually taken you into a long trade. But what's so special about these Holy Grail trade setups? Well, they're called Holy Grail not because they have a high reliability, it's because we are looking for a strong move. In other words, we are not looking for the move to go to our first target here. We're actually looking for it to go to our typical wave 3. Why? Because this is an important low. This will be defined as the start of the sequence. In Elliott wave terms, the initial rally off an important low will be considered a wave 1. The initial correction, which subdivides into an ABC minor pattern, which is what we have here, will be considered a wave 2. After a wave 2, we're then anticipating a wave 3 kind of rally. And in Elliott wave terms, this is the strongest and longest move in a completed 5-wave sequence. In other words, if we can catch the very end of the wave 2 correction, which we're looking to do here, we can get in right before the start of a very strong move. In other words, it represents the largest potential profit for the smallest initial risk. So let's see how this unfolded. The market started to rally up, started to rally up, started to rally up, started to rally up. We actually had another opportunity for a buy setup, another buy setup here, you can see, to actually pyramid or add some more positions to your long trade, but it kept on going up, and then got to within 1 tick of this level here. What we teach is when you're actually looking to place an order to come out of your trade here, which you can via our trade module, you can see this sets up the whole of the position for you, so when you want to enter your trade you can do it really quickly and easily. But what we suggest is you actually drag your risk reward level 1 tick less than the actual target. In other words, what we want to do is we want to get our order in 1 tick before the target. In other words, you don't want a situation like this where it gets 1 tick within your target and you miss it. So what we suggest is placing your order just 1 tick below the level if it's a long trade, above the level if it's a short trade. And as you can see, that would have then hit that level on this 2-minute chart 1, 2, 3 times. So if you had an MIT order to come out there, then you would have actually probably come out at that level very nicely. If I scroll forward the rest of the day, you can see that that actually was the very high of the day. I'll just take the trade module off, and so you can see the trade module would have done this all for you, which is really quite neat. So I'll just take that off. Just zoom out a bit so you can see exactly what this looks like for the whole day. Just take that white space off the right hand side to make it a little bit easier to see everything. And there we go, there's the whole day. So in other words, you would have had this buy setup here that would have got you in a trade for the smallest initial risk. You'd have then gone up and actually come out at what would have been the high of the day pretty much. But the most important thing is the profit would have been 6 times the initial risk. In other words, 6 times greater than the loss you had earlier. Remember, we had a small -1 hour loss earlier. So these are the kind of trades that we like to look for in MTPredictor, and this is why I call it the Holy Grail trade setup, because the potential profits are large in relation to the initial risks. But can you see how this was all set up? It was all set up in advance because you had this 15-minute decision point on the chart there before you. Remember, we went to the 15-minute chart, we placed that level off the prior swing pivot really easily, and that was on the chart before the market even opened. So before it opened, you were ready for this major support zone. Once it came in, you then watched the market rally up off that. Then as it started to correct down, you'd have been actively watching your market analyzer to see for buy setups, and you'd have known that these buy setups were potential Holy Grail trade setups because the low of the day came in there at our support level, and that was anticipated in advance, that then this was going to be a Holy Grail trade setup. You'd have then managed to see this, that it came in on your 2-minute chart on your market analyzer, and as such you'd have been able to catch that corrective low. So these are the kind of trade setups we encourage you to look for, and it's what we teach in our advanced training. This is why it's so important to come in and see how we actually use MTPredictor to take you to much higher levels than just the standard and automatic setups on their own. So hopefully this has been a very good example of one of my favourite trade setups, which is the Holy Grail trade setup, and hopefully you can see now why it's a favourite of mine, because the potential profits are much larger than the initial risk. In other words, I think it represents one of the best trade setups in the book for a high profit, low initial risk potential trade setup. And as you can see, yesterday was absolute perfect opportunity of this, and I haven't even talked about adding some more positions here. If you wanted to, you could place some more positions here. Again, one tick short of the initial target, so you could have actually added some more positions to add another 2.7R on the way up there, but that's for the more experienced users among you. But either way, this is the Holy Grail trade setup that I wanted to have a good look at today, and there was your order, one tick shy of that particular target, and that would have got you out of the high of the day for a lovely 6R profit. So great example of the MTPredictor Holy Grail trade setup in action on the YM yesterday.